Did you know that having a sense of grounded belonging is actually crucial to your success and the success that you would like to create? That is what we're going to be talking about in today's episode and really diving into what belonging actually is, what it looks like, and how you can cultivate that for yourself. But that it goes into your home life, your roots, how you feel rooted, how you feel a sense of groundedness and security and safety, and really, again, how this sense of belonging is so necessary for catapulting you towards what it is that you're wanting to create. And believe it or not, this actually has a huge amount to do with your womb and healing your relationship with your womb and your inner feminine energy. So let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Essence Shown podcast. I am your host, Olivia Heine. I am an NLP and cyclical success coach. So I am here to help you revolutionize the way that you do success by making success an inside out game. So much of what we're taught about success in our current world, the structures, the productivity hacks, the time management tools, it's all about what is existing outside of you, when true success is what comes from within. And the questions that we're answering here on this podcast and that we dive into in my courses and in my coaching and in my little corner of the internet is actually understanding how can you make success an inside job, how you can work with your inner cyclical nature in order to do that. That's what we call working like a woman, actually harnessing the biology that exists within you to work smarter, not harder. But most importantly, actually putting a system in place that allows you to create this inner sense of balance and harmony. Because when you are living from this state of balance and harmony, that is when you are receptive to everything that it is that you're wanting to create. As soon as we get stressed, overwhelmed, we're hustling, we're pushing, we're forcing, we tend to shut ourselves off from the world. And not only from the world, but actually from the things that we most want to create. That's when the doubts come up. That's when we start to feel fear. So when we start to experience that imposter syndrome or comparednitis. So all of these things are so normal and natural in the journey towards creating the massive success that you're wanting to experience in your life. But we want to do it in a way that is actually sustainable, that is holistic, and like I said, gives you that inner sense of grounded balance. And that beautifully segues me into what we're talking about today, which is the whole concept of belonging and feeling a deep sense of grounded belongingness in your life, and how that is a huge part of experiencing an inner sense of balance. So before we dive into that, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I don't care if you're new. I don't care if you're returning. I mean, of course I do. Thank you so much for being here. But regardless of how many times you've listened, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That is how we are building out this community here. Make sure you share this episode with someone who would appreciate it or someone who might be interested or curious or not have any idea about this at all. Pass it along or pass on another episode that you think they might like, share, leave that rating and review. It helps us so much when you do this. And when you leave a rating and review, either wherever you're listening to your podcast, or if you leave a comment as a rating, so to say, in the description or in the comment section of the YouTube video, and you screenshot your rating and review, send it over to me either via DMs at Olivia Heine Coaching on Instagram or to our email, hello@oliviaheine.com. I will send you a little bonus goodie to thank you for leaving that rating and review, but I just need to see that you have left one. Okay, so let's dive into today's episode. If anything that we talk about resonates with you today and you're like, oh my God, this is exactly me. She is speaking literally to me. How is she in my head? And you want to start activating this and diving deeper, I have a ton of links in the show notes below, in the description below, where you can get into some flow freebies to just start getting your hands into this work. I would highly recommend the Heal Your Hustle flow freebie, which is in the description below based on the content of this episode today. My Rest for Success course is my signature course for tapping you into the feminine art of success, healing this masculine hustle culture, and allowing you to really harness your cyclical nature. And that is part of what we're talking about today. And of course, one-on-one coaching is where it's at for this kind of deep subconscious redesign work, which is basically what we're talking about today. When we're wanting to feel more belonging, we have to go in and do that inner work. And that is really, really powerful to do in a one-on-one setting. And there are links to how we can work together one-on-one in the description below as well. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty of belonging. And I mentioned this before in the introduction, but belonging is really the sense of home, the sense of roots, the sense of being rooted somewhere. And what this essentially creates is a frequency of safety, a frequency of security, and of being really grounded. And there's so many ways in which those words can be defined. Like we can talk about home in the literal sense of a home. So growing up, being a kid, being part of a home, being part of a family dynamic. But a home can also be the sanctuary of like where you live, how you feel in your physical space, how you feel then in the home that is your body. Same thing that goes for security or safety. We can talk about security again in this like literal physical sense, or we can talk about it in the security of money, and the security of a job, and the safety of what you're wanting to create, of being safe in your body, feeling safe and good in the body that you're in, the body that's supporting you. And all of this really creates a frequency of being grounded, and being grounded in yourself, being grounded in your belonging of where your place is in this world. And it's really important to say that when I say where your place is in this world, it has nothing to do with a status. It has nothing to do with who you are in relationship to someone else or something else. And it has everything to do with your inner understanding of how you are and what you need and how you need to show up in order to give that to yourself. So when you feel that you are living in a sense of belonging. So you understand where you fit in the world, essentially, on an internal level. This creates a state of internal balance. So when you have an internal state of harmony, you are able to be more grounded and anchored, regardless of what's happening in the world around you. And that's why I said that belonging, it's not about it being in relation to a status or something external, like a job position or a role that you have in your family dynamic or in your partnership or whatever it might be. It's really about your inner understanding of where your harmony lies and being able to feel grounded in that so that you always feel this constant state of belonging, because inevitably things are going to happen in the external world around you. And if you don't have that belonging internally first, those are external things are completely going to throw you off kilter. So I kind of want to put a little personal anecdote in here and share with you my personal journey around belonging, because this has been one of the biggest kind of holes that I've felt in my life throughout my entire life. And it all started when I was 6 years old and my family moved from the US to Germany, and I was put into a German school system. I didn't speak a word of German. I was a shy kid. I felt very, very uncomfortable, very out of place. I cried every single night. I wish that it was a dream that I would wake up from. There was just like a lot of inner turmoil because of the external environment that I was in. And I was incredibly sad and unhappy. And of course, as time goes on, you assimilate as a child. And a few years after that, my parents end up getting divorced. And once more, feeling like I don't belong here. So not only was it I don't belong in this country, like literally physically, but then fast forwarding, it's I don't know where I belong here because I'm being moved back between different homes. My parents both moved a lot. I was like, I don't know where my sense of space is that I feel grounded in the world. And I believe that as we grow up as children, we do really attach that to a physical place. And in my mind, that was always this place that we lived in the States. That was like our first family home. That was where everything in my mind was kind of quote unquote perfect. And so I had a sense of belonging there before all of these external life events came through and started to kind of shake up what that sense of belonging was. And of course, like nothing bad to say about my parents, nothing bad to say about myself. Like this was just all that I knew at the time. And I was just kind of coping with how I was feeling. But it actually created this pattern and this belief system of I don't belong here in the world. Like I'm living in Germany, I'm part German, but I don't really speak the language as perfectly as I would like to at the time. And I don't know if I fit in here in this culture, but I also don't fit in back in the States because I haven't been there for so long. Like there was a lot of kind of like, where do I belong in the world? And it set me off on a journey to kind of seek this out. And on this journey, I moved to Canada. I lived in Canada and studied there and worked there for 6 years. And of course, it felt very at home there to an extent because that is kind of my background. That's where my family is from, the English language. Like there's so many things that feel really at home there. But still, it was interesting moving through kind of friendships and getting to know people and recognizing that there were a lot of things that I internally felt quote unquote left out on about because I didn't have that same experience growing up. I wasn't in Canada growing up. Like there were things that I was out of the loop on, which again kind of tore on this wound internally of I don't belong here. And from there, it took me this quest, this journey that I was on took me to Mexico. It took me to Copenhagen. It took me back to Germany. And the entire process and journey that I went through was this seeking of belonging, this seeking of, I want to feel grounded somewhere. I want to feel secure somewhere. And I remember having a conversation with a dear friend who was actually on the podcast. We talk about all the inner workings of mindset for success. So I will link the podcast right here, Michaela. And I remember talking to her and saying, I just really want to get my own place because I've been jumping around from place to place for so often and for so long now. And I just want something that's mine. And it was kind of this juxtaposition moment of I want something that's mine. I want to feel grounded somewhere, but I also don't feel like that place exists. And so I'm not allowing myself to get grounded anywhere at all. Like I'm always there for a bit. It doesn't feel good. And then I move on. And so ultimately, to just streamline this down and not bore you with this years long story for hours and hours. But what ended up happening was because I was jumping from place to place, because I was seeking something externally outside of myself that actually existed within me, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I was very ungrounded internally because I was always seeking externally. And this ended up hurting my business at the time as I was already starting my coaching business and it had gotten up and running as I was in one particular place. And then as I started jumping and moving around, it started to suffer. And the same thing with my relationship. So I was dead set on attracting a partner. And again, that's really hard to do when you're not grounded. And again, that can be being grounded physically somewhere, but more importantly, it's being grounded within yourself. So there's not one singular way to look at the situation. So for example, any of my fellow entrepreneurs out there or business owners who are thinking, oh, that means I can't like work from anywhere, I can't travel at the same time. Yes. However, it's really important to understand and focus on the groundedness within yourself. Because in my case, every time I went somewhere new, and this is true for most of us, if we don't have this internal groundedness, we're going to be spending the energy that we actually need to be using to stay grounded internally on figuring out our surroundings externally. So, for example, when I was in Copenhagen, it's a completely new language, it's a completely new setup, it's a completely new system of how the subway works, and all of these things that I had to figure out. And so I actually felt incredibly vulnerable that whole time and incredibly fragile. And my inner child was like freaking the fuck out because I wasn't grounded internally within myself first. So everything that happened externally was really stressful. It created some sort of turmoil. Anytime someone said something to me and I didn't understand it, it stressed me out as opposed to being grounded within myself and then being able to manage the situation externally. And the same thing was then true with my business. All that energy was going to actually just assimilating to the situation, and I didn't have enough energy left to move things forward towards the goals that I wanted to create. So all of this is to boil down to the fact that when we don't have this inner sense of groundedness within us, it's going to be really hard to move things forward in terms of your goals, in terms of the outcomes that you want to create, in terms of the career moves or the business goals that you have, because we're constantly just reacting and trying to manage what's happening externally because we don't already have that inner sense of groundedness. So belonging actually means then coming back to your wholeness, belonging fully and wholly to yourself, and not just belonging to part of yourself or accepting part of yourself or the part that you think is acceptable, you think that people will like, but all of you, your entire being of who you are. And this is where womb healing is so important here because it is the process of coming back to yourself and reintegrating yourself fully and wholly, because this is where your true authentic self lives. It's the playful part of you. It's the pleasure focused part of you. It's the creative part of you. It's all of these parts of ourselves that we disregard because we think that they're not valuable in pursuit of the success that we want, or they won't be accepted. And so we kind of store all of that in our womb space as women, okay? And we store it in a lot of other places in our body, but we're just going to focus on this one area for right now, okay? Because this acceptability really has to do with you being authentically you. And that is where this comes from, this womb space, you being able to show up fully and wholly. And along with that, your womb is actually your first home. You literally came from a womb. Doesn't matter who you are. That is how you were created. That was your first home. And it is also this energetic home within yourself then. Like I said, it's where you can authentically be you. You're not changing yourself based on the external situation. You ground yourself in this inner sense of home from within. Not only that, but the womb is also the energetic space of creation, literally the space of creation. But when we talk about success, it is the energetic space of creation, right? And on top of that, it is also the inner space of security. This is the safety, the home, the womb, right? And when we are creating something, we need to feel protected within what we're creating, right? And the same way that when we are growing a child, or the process of creating a little human being, it needs that safety, it needs that security, it needs that warmth in order to grow before it is exposed to everything else in the world. And so this is really about creating this space within yourself and doing the work around healing what might be coming up that is preventing you from feeling this inner sense of belonging, or preventing you from feeling this inner wholeness, in order to then create that inner sense of groundedness. And what this comes down to is understanding how to meet your needs on an internal level and then also on an external level, because ultimately those two things go hand in hand. And like we heard in my story, belonging is a multifaceted feeling. It's a multifaceted concept, and understanding how it shows up in your life is going to look very different to you. But it's so important to understand that there's healing to be done around this. If you're constantly seeking external validation or looking outside of yourself for what other people are doing, there's a lack of inner grounded belongingness to yourself, because we're always looking externally first as opposed to looking internally first. And this ultimately starts to affect your success. It starts to affect what it is that you're wanting to create and the results that you in turn receive. So belonging to yourself within means not being pulled in 100 million different directions every time a new trend comes out, or every time a new business coach tells you you need to do XYZ, or every time your mother or your father or your friend or your sister or whoever gives you pushback on what it is that you're doing, or questions what it is that you're wanting to create. It also brings you back to yourself when you're starting to fall into comparison or fall into imposter syndrome. All of these reactions and responses are little tell signs where our ego is searching for something outside of ourselves, which means that we're not grounded from within first. And those are the things that we want to be healing through creating this inner sense of belonging. Inevitably, success is also going to bring challenges, right? It's not going to be a walk in the park. And that doesn't mean that we can't still take the path of least resistance. And that's something that I talk about a lot, because when we're talking about the energy of success and the mindset of success, there is a path of least resistance when we're tuned into our bodies, when we're tuned into our intuition, when we're tuned into the cyclical nature of success. We're not needing to push and force things forward. So we can follow this path of quote unquote least resistance. But sometimes that path is actually really hard in and of itself, because it requires us to do things that are uncomfortable, or to face challenges that we've never faced before. And this is the natural ebb and flow of success. But in order to be able to really flow through all of these ebbs and flows with more ease, it is so important to not base how you are doing internally off of what's happening in the world around you. So let's say you launch something and it doesn't go as planned, or you apply for a job, or you ask for a promotion and those things fall through, or you just feel like you didn't do a great job on that presentation. whatever's happening externally, if you're basing your sense of belonging and feeling good and feeling grounded off of those things, you're going to be on a crazy roller coaster ride that is always going to feel like it's just yanking you from one side to the next the whole entire time. And of course, that doesn't feel grounding. Of course, that doesn't give you a sense of belonging within yourself. And of course, that's going to perpetuate this external search for belonging and fitting in somewhere based on an external situation or job or business results because you don't feel it internally. So, again, what belonging comes down to is understanding what your story is around belonging. So, I shared mine with you. What is yours? And feel free to drop it in the comment section. I would love to hear it, or you can reach out to me personally and we can uncover it together. And two is to go through the process of healing what's coming up for you around belonging and creating, step number three, this inner sense of home within yourself. And that's where the womb space and actually connecting back to your womb, connecting back to your feminine energy, because that's kind of bringing you back into the wholeness of who you are, because so much of our success is based on the masculine parts of ourselves, the doing, the organizing, the structuring, the executing. And so bringing back yourself into the wholeness of who you are and grounding yourself in that. Again, when you have this internal sense of harmony, of groundedness, of balance, which comes through this belonging within yourself, you are then able to activate what it is that you're wanting to create in the world. So if you are ready to do this work, if this is so speaking to you, like I said, go into the show notes below, into this description below, and check out the different ways that we can work together. You can go right ahead and book a flow consultation call so that we can chat about your specific and unique situation. And I can help you make the most aligned decision for you about what your next step is in order to start clearing and healing this. And ultimately, remembering that this comes back to the success that you're here to create, to the mission and the medicine that you're meant to bring into the world. And if you have that inner fire within you and you're like, oh my God, I know I'm here for something bigger. I know I want to do this, but blah, 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 blah. And there's like a whole list of like, but I don't have clarity and I don't know. And so is already doing it. And then I can't be successful because so and so told me, whatever the list is, those are the things that are actually blocking you from your success. We need to clear those in order to give you the space to step into what you're here to create. And having that inner sense of harmony and balance is where it's at. And the systems that then support that, for example, through working like a woman with your cyclical nature, is the process and the way to do that. So all of the links and descriptions for that are in the show notes below. I am so excited to connect with you more, to chat, and to take that next step, support you in doing that. And as always, subscribe, like, share, leave that rating and review, pass this along, and I will see you back here next time.